Welcome, and happy Halloween to you. Today we're going to be looking at a metal album. I think fits the theme pretty well. And this is an album out of the Tulsa area. Here's the album. Welcome to the Altar. It's a full-length album by this metal band called Alterblood. Pretty straightforward metal album. It's not the most intense thing you're going to experience. It's not going to be the grimiest and grittiest thing you're going to experience. It's a bit of a throwback in terms of metal music. Certainly the way all these micro genres have evolved over the years. Things have gotten fairly abstracted and pretty hard on the ears for most listeners. So it's kind of nice to have a record like this come through every once in a while. I don't know a ton of metal. I can't really make any band comparisons or anything, but from what I've heard and what I understand, this falls in line with stuff that really happened more a few decades back, whenever metal was really kind of coming into its own. As far as first impressions on this record go, well, the first thing I notice is altar is spelt with an E. If we're referring to like the religious object that you typically find in a church situation, that is spelt with an A, altar. But perhaps it's like a double meaning of some sort. Alter, meaning to change something, perhaps. I don't know. But moving on from that, yeah, this is about 45 minutes or so. And whenever I kind of talk about a nice balanced metal album, that's kind of what I mean. Because there's some really extreme genres that you can really only make like a 20-minute album out of before it starts to just get too much. It gets really samey and it's just a lot to process. And then like on the other side of the spectrum, you kind of have like your stoner metal and your sludge metal and all that, where they'll go on for like 80 minutes for an album with like these 10-minute tracks. And you know, it can be hypnotic, it can put you in a zone, but it's very much on the other side. And here's this like nice middle of the road kind of classic styled metal album with lots of really interesting vocals. I think it's not always stuck in the same gear. There's some interesting kind of changes there, and I like my screams and my squeals and my growls quite a bit. And you get a nice little taste of those on here. Certainly tons of guitar work. I wouldn't really call it technical as a lot of listeners listen for. Everything's mixed very nicely. I really appreciate how clear it is without being like sterile. It still feels distorted. It still feels rough around the edges. There's some moments on this album where it's just like, oh, the bass just like grumbles down like on the far low end of your mix and almost like causes your mind's eye to blur for a bit almost. And so you get moments like that, but it's not so muddied up that you can't make anything out. And that goes the same for the vocals. I personally can rarely ever make out the lyrics in a lot of metal styled vocalizations, and sometimes that's just due to the performance and sometimes it's due to the mixing. In this case, it's definitely due to the performance, because the mixing quality on this, you definitely hear everything right front and center. I just can't always decipher all the growling. I'm going to try playing some of this for you. Like, I don't know what he's saying there, but I enjoy the heck out of that music. I will say there's one particular misstep here. In an effort to keep things varied, I think a lot of times bands want to kind of change it up, especially if they feel they need to express that they can go unplugged, they can have like, you know, a quiet moment. There's one track that comes on partway through the album, and it's not like that the whole way, but it really starts off kind of out of nowhere, and you're like, wow, this is a lot different, and the vocals are much clearer, and they're sung rather than shouted. It could have worked, perhaps. I feel like it's not integrated well enough into the album. And also, whenever it's so pared back, a lot of the bones of the structures of these songs kind of get exposed. And to be honest, lyrics aren't really that great here, now that I can hear them. Time has aged us. It's one of those things that sounds a little bit deeper and more ornate than it really is, you know. For example, oh, but it's gonna get heavy again. So yeah, on first impression, it makes me question if all the other lyrics are kind of just as like pseudo deep and pseudo dark, you know. So you kind of get like a nice little range of growly, screamy vocals there. I like that. That's actually from the final track, which is called The Creature. I think it really ends the album on a strong note. So yeah, I like this album quite a bit. I've never seen this band live, but I would totally be interested in catching a show sometime. It's just a nicely balanced album that kind of relies on your tried and true elements of hard rock music. Yeah, I think it succeeds pretty well at what it's doing. Of course, these are first impressions. I haven't delved into a whole lot here. However, we also have to evaluate the weirdness of this album. Let's bring up that weirdometer. Alright, what are we feeling on this? I feel like in the context of metal, it's not really that weird. In the context of music in general around here, I mean, metal is kind of weird in and of itself, I think. So it's kind of a hard line to walk. I do think it's not really trying a whole lot that's new or fresh or innovative. But I think it's got its weird moments. So it really just depends on your audience-ship. Some audiences may find this very plain. Some audiences may find this very out there. So this is going to be pretty down the middle. I'm going to give it a 4. And a lot of that's just because it's not doing a whole lot that hasn't been done before. But in the greater context of making Oklahoma weirder, yeah, I think it does that. So that's going to be this episode of First Impressions. Hope you enjoyed it. And if you enjoy this sort of thing in general, please let me know. If you've heard this album, have any thoughts on it, please leave a comment. Reach out to us on social media. We're at Weirder OK on all platforms. And yeah, I will see you in the next episode. Thanks for watching, and yeah, happy Halloween, everybody.
Fish head soup is a mighty fine soup, even though it's kind of green.